But there was also an equal amount of agents who actually didn't have a lot of confidence in the value that they brought to the table as an agent. Whether that was a buyer's agent or a listing agent, many agents in our industry have struggled with, okay, what is my value? And the reality is, if we sat down and we demonstrated, okay, on this commission, this amount of hours, this amount of hours I put in on the deal, I'm worth X amount of dollars per hour. Anybody want to take a guess on what the average hourly rate for an agent in our office was? Based on their closed business? We'll take a stab.
75.
$75 an hour, okay?
I would completely already start.
Ballpark, just take a stab.
I'll go with Chris for 78, 75.
No, 500. $500 per hour, the good ones. And so what I'll tell you is, you guys are already in a position, I think, as agents trying to refresh, revamp, juice your database up, get some business rolling. You guys are now responsible for demonstrating to your clients what your value is. And so if we sat down and I was like, okay, Chris, getting your 20-minute spiel or your 5-minute conversation with the client about what your value proposition is, where would you start? Would you know?
I think I struggled with that.
Okay, Heather, what about you?
Absolutely would struggle with that.
Yeah. Well, why would you struggle with it? Is it because you don't know real estate? Because I don't think that's true.
No.
Why do you think you would struggle?
Well, where to start?
Where to start? Okay.
And prior to the settlement, I always used to get buyer's rep agreements.
Yeah.
But most people did, but not before. First house. I take people out to a house or two.
Yeah.
And that's kind of showing my value at that point, and then I'm getting them, and I'd 100% get them to sign a buyer's agreement.
Yeah. Well, so here's where people struggle. It's a confidence thing. And what I mean by that is just what you all are doing this morning. I will have more confidence in doing something if I've already practiced it. If I've already done it 50 times, right? When I learned how to play baseball, I wasn't very confident that I could step up to home plate and hit the ball. I remember that. I remember going to practice and whiffing at the coach's pitches over and over again until finally I listened to what they were telling me to do. I stopped my bad habits, and it all came together when I watched the ball, put the bat on the ball, and connected it, right? And then the more I did that, the more confident I felt. More hits I got. I could step up to the plate and really feel like, man, I've got a good chance of hitting this. Because of the practice, the reps, the confidence I had that I can get a hit because I got a hit in practice. I can get a hit because I got a hit off my coach who threw that 60-mile-an-hour curveball and then an 80-mile-an-hour fastball, and I was able to hit it, right? I got better, and I knew what my value was as a batter because I practiced it, because I knew how to do it. And so value is in the heart of all businesses because all businesses are an exchange of value. At the base level of business, we are all looking for value. Okay? So I am looking for, in any service space, industry value. So when my HVAC broke down a couple years ago, hey Jim, when my HVAC broke down a couple years ago, I knew that I had a guy who I had worked with in the nonprofit sector about my nonprofit's HVAC. He'd done work, and so when it came time for my house, I called him because he came and did a good job at my business, and he had demonstrated its value to me, right? So you determine the value that you provide, and your clients determine how valuable it is to them. The goal of this content, this class, is to help you understand how important value is and how you can build your business around it. So the law of value squared is this: the value that you give determines the value that you get. Right? As an agent, we should all have a pretty good handle that when we work with a client, this is what you are going to provide. And then they are going to feel that, and they will determine whether it is that valuable to them by signing a buyer agreement, by signing an exclusive right to sell. Some clients will say, well, I don't really want to pay you this. So they might not think it's worth that, which is why you have some listings that are for sale by owner. They've worked with a realtor or they've not, and so they don't understand the demonstrated value of an agent, or they've had a bad experience. And so a prior experience has demonstrated to them that a realtor wasn't worth the money based on the value that they got previously. So the challenge for all businesses is that you have to demonstrate that value so they know to agree to it, even when they know your price before they experience it. So it's like, hey, here's what I cost, here's how valuable I am, this is what my services, it's what I charge for my services. And you're entering into a contract with somebody who agrees on it, right? And so there are three ways that real estate agents present and deliver the value. Number one, they establish trust. We don't really do anything with any clients without trust. That's certainly not at a high level. We provide fiduciary representation. Does that mean that let me rephrase it. When we say fiduciary representation, what do you think about? When you think about the word fiduciary, do you always align it to real estate or realtor?
No.
Or are there other things in our world or in your life experience where you think that's fiduciary?
Fiduciary responsibility would be taking care of anyone else's needs in that sense. Because even like, as a banker, you have fiduciary responsibilities.
Some of the professions have fiduciary responsibility.
Okay, well, I'm gonna respond to that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a good response or not.
Sure.
A while back, I worked for Edward Jones.
Yeah.
And, you know, all those financial advisors claim to be fiduciaries.
Sure.
I don't know about all of them, but with that one, it's absolute bullcrap.
Sure.
You know, they don't give a damn about their clients at all, and that's the reason why I'm not with them.
Sure.
So,
And that's a reputation they have.
we need for sure.
Yeah, so what I would say is lawyers have a fiduciary responsibility, right? And we're talking implied, right?
Yeah.
Whether it pans out or is real is a different story, right?
Technically, when doctors and
Doctors are fiduciaries, bankers, and real estate agents, and obviously financial advisors. But what I'm going to say here is realtors have a fiduciary responsibility that I don't think the public is super aware of it in terms of how we as professionals view ourselves. There's a high dollar amount attached to fiduciary. Doctors make a ton of money. Lawyers make a ton of money. You know what? Realtors make a ton of money. And so at the end of the day, we do as realtors, and it is according to our laws nationally and state in terms of real estate legislation and law and practice, we have to provide that fiduciary representation. And then the third way is to deliver core services with a positive and memorable client experience that will also surprise and delight. Okay, and so that third one is one that is super complex and one we will unpack, right? Establishing trust is pretty straightforward, right? We've all been in relationships with people, with businesses. We understand generally how that works, how we like to be treated, and what kind of experience we can provide to establish that trust. Providing a fiduciary representation is just a standard of professionalism, in my opinion, that I think all of us have to work on all the time, because that's what our clients deserve, right? And so this is what it looks like. I call this the value model statement. Up at the top, you've got that established and built trust. You do that by demonstrating your knowledge, your skills, and your experience. If you're a new agent, there's not a whole lot of experience you have in terms of doing the job, but you weren't born yesterday either. So you have a lot of life experience, right? We've come from a different career that would probably help us build relationships. And so while you might not have a ton of like real estate experience, you have great, in my opinion, people experience that sometimes newer agents discount just because they don't have as much real estate knowledge or as much real estate experience. And here's what I know to be true. The number one agent in this office today been in the business less than 2 years. And so it's not going to hinder you if you don't let it. Right? And then number two, the bottom piece of that sandwich is we're providing that fiduciary representation. You represent the client's best interest at all times. You don't represent Chris's best interest. You don't represent the client who put in an offer in on the listing, where you represent the seller, where you're just like, hey, seller, we gotta do this because it's the buyer's gonna walk if this, we don't do this for them, we don't fix this roof or patch that hole or do this. And it actually might not be in best interest of that seller to do that work. Right? You represent the client's best interest at all times. That's what being a fiduciary in real estate means. Not to your benefit, not to anyone else's benefit, but to theirs. It is your job to take care of them in that manner. And then the meat, right? Is these three things, right? Number three is the core services. It's what you do. It's what you do and show up to do. Whether that's a CMA, a great buyer consultation, a great seller consultation. What your contracted close system looks like. The frequency of your communication with them. That's what you do. That's the core services that you provide. Showing them homes. Negotiating on their behalf. Those are core services of a real estate. And then number four, obviously aligned with that. How do we do it? How do we deliver that client experience? Because you can be supremely competent and cold in your dealings with your client. You see it.
And you can be super friendly and completely incompetent.
100%. I've had plenty of experiences, and I'll just use the medical field as an example, where I've been in the hospital for whatever reason. And I actually had incredible care, but the doctor didn't really have great bedside manner. They were kind of cold. Wasn't super bubbly, wasn't extroverted like I am. Didn't laugh at the jokes I cracked to make the situation better for me, right? But I got great care. Does that make sense? And so there's a difference between 3 and 4. But 4 really augments the value you have. It makes them feel great. Number 5 is surprise and delight. And that's just extras. So that might be, okay, for every client who I close and we have a closing, they get this kind of experience. They get this gift. We're going to throw a housewarming party. Or for every agent who lists with me in the month of July, or for every client that lists with me in the month of July, they are going to get a 50-inch screen TV to take to the new home. Those are things that you can add that are just extra, that surprise and delight. Right? But this is the value model sandwich, and that is what's important. So when we establish trust, it looks a lot like this. I always laugh at this because it makes me think of Meet the Parents and the circle of trust. But trust starts with empathy, goes to competency, into transparency, and then is proven through dependability. So empathy is coming from a place of understanding, caring, and authenticity. When we start our relationships, or at least the process of working with a buyer and seller, many of these people you probably already are going to have relationships with because they're probably in your sphere. You have to really come from a place of understanding. You have to genuinely care about them, and you will always, always, always do yourself a disservice if you are not authentically you. Pretending to be somebody you are not in this industry will get you found out really fast. And the reason why I think that's so important is people work with agents who they can relate to. People work with agents who genuinely do feel that they care about them. And when you can come from a place of understanding, caring, and authenticity, well, guess what? When you show up confidently, you are walking up another staircase in their mind for the value that you're providing. and the trust that you're building. So competency, I'll just be very transparent with you. Like, I want people to care about me. But gosh, if I'm working with somebody in the service-based industry that's providing value for me, I want them to be confident. I want them to know what they're doing. I want them to have the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience to get me to the outcome that I desire. And that's your job here, confidence. And so confidence takes a hit here if we don't feel like we have the knowledge, skills, and experience. And let me just, if I can be abrasive, it's no one else's job than your own than to make sure you have things under control. If you lack knowledge in real estate, I'll just be transparent with you. I love this office. I love what we do. There's no shortage of training and information that you need to be knowledgeable on anything we do in real estate. And if there's a gap, my suggestion is, how do we ask questions and who do we ask those questions to? Skills. We've said this ad nauseum, especially when all the stuff with the lawsuit went down. We're moving out of a speed-based market, where all it took was just getting in front of a client, putting a sign in the yard, getting multiple offers and selling it and getting it closed. Moving out of that. We've been out of that for probably 16 months. Probably longer than that, maybe 18. And now we're in a skills-based market. 10% of the agents are doing 90% of the business. You know why that is? Because they have the skills necessary to go out, get the business, maintain it, close it, and then go get more. They have the skills to do that. That doesn't mean you all can't break in, that doesn't mean you all are capable of doing it, but the skills matter. And if there are skills within real estate that will help you become a better fiduciary to your clients, you need to figure out what those skills are that you need to improve on. Is it the conversations you're having? High-level conversations is a skill. Is it your negotiating ability? That's skill. I've come across a lot of shrewd negotiators in real estate who early on ate my lunch. Right? Then I got better. I got more reps. I got more confident. I got better at negotiating. Right? I got better at the conversation. And then obviously the experience with it. I can hold a brilliant open house because I've held 30. Right? I had the experience of doing that. I can provide a great experience for a buyer because I've worked with 70. Right? You get experience and you gain confidence through that experience. And then once we have empathy, we have competency, we show up and do a great job here. Transparency is we might as well just say communication, right? Like, I would maybe just put these together. One of the best lessons I learned as a brand new agent was bad news doesn't get better with age. And what my first broker meant by that is there will always be news you have to deliver to your clients. Because your clients and you can only control part of the transaction and part of the experience. There are other parties involved. There's usually a lender. There's usually a title person. There's usually an appraiser, a home inspector. There's the other agent. There's their clients. Sometimes there's the law. There's always factors within a real estate transaction that you don't get to control. You will have no control. And occasionally, an appraisal might come in love. And then what do you have to do? Well, shoot, I gotta let my clients know the appraisal came in love. And we were under contract for this house at $350. The appraisal came in at $341. We're under contract with the buyer, but it was an appraisal contingency on the contract. So now we're back at the negotiating table. And we can hold a hard line and say, all right, we've got a contract at $350, and they can turn around and say, you do, and we have an appraisal contingency. So we'd like to negotiate price. And then we can talk about, okay, well, we don't want to move off that number. And then at that point, they can walk because they have a new contract, that appraisal contingency. But the appraisal or the contract is good for the purchase price pending the appraisal. value the pricing. And sometimes that's bad news that you have to deliver to your client. But it's all about how you frame it. It's all about your emotions when you deliver it. If you're stressed out and anxious delivering that news, you think your client would feel that? You think they'll feel that energy? And do you think that might rub off on them? I've seen it time and time again. If you are not calm, cool, and confident in situations where you're delivering news that might be less than ideal for a client, they will pick up on your energy and their anxiety will increase or decrease based on how you show up, how you respond. And so your ability to be honest, be clear, and be open, have transparent communication builds trust to a deep degree. I have actually built more trust delivering bad news than delivering good news. You know why? Because I'm able to demonstrate my value at a higher level when things go sideways. Because as realtors, you are a professional problem solver. That's why they hire a realtor. Because if it was easy, they could just go do it by themselves. You're demonstrating your value. You're saving them costs in the long run by showing up and doing a high level job and communicating very clearly. And the reality is you might show up, deliver some less than ideal news, and do it supremely well, calm, cool, collected, and they still might fly off the handle. And guess what? You still have an opportunity to respond in a professional way. You then have the job of de-escalating them, getting their mind right, talking about solutions like, hey, we got this bad news or this less than ideal news, and here are 3 options in which we can do it. And then all of a sudden, you've reminded them that, hey, we have things we can control and we can respond to this. And then sometimes, and I'll just be very honest, if something happens that is completely out of your control and out of your client's control, and the ball is firmly in somebody else's court, it's a reminder to them, we showed up. We delivered on everything we said we would deliver on. We executed everything we said we would execute. And this third party we had no control of is the reason why this deal is either gonna come together or fall apart, right? So when you can communicate transparently at a high level with honesty and openness, you actually build more trust, bless you, in that way. Not that you should be looking for bad news to deliver so you can enter in a deeper level of trust, but what I can promise you is when you get people out of that, I guess, anxious period of dealing with the transaction and into the outcome ultimately that everybody wanted, gosh, you got a client for life. Because you cared enough to deliver the hard news and the solution, bless you, to get them where they wanted. And that goes back to this, dependability. You keep your promises. You talk about your core services. When you sit down in a buyer consult and you say, this is my value, this is what you get for working with me, and you don't deliver on those things, trust goes down. If you don't set proper expectations for the seller, like, hey, here's what the market is doing right now. You had a value in your head for what we should list this home for. And to be honest with you, seller, I love you, I care about you, which is why I'm going to tell you this. The market doesn't support that valuation of your home. It might sit longer. Potential buyers aren't having negative experience seeing the home and seeing a certain number attached when the market has demonstrated over the last 6 months and 40509 that says that this house should probably be priced 20 grand lower than what you think it should. That's a hard conversation to have. And if you don't set that expectation up front, even if they're like, you know what, I don't care, let's put it on the market, we'll list it at my number, and then we'll revisit it in 2 weeks. And talk about your number. You have to have that conversation. You have to set expectations. You have to do that early. And then you have to maintain their confidence. You have to execute being a fiduciary. Their confidentiality, You can't just go flat, and it's not like it's to your spouse or to somebody else, like to parties in the transaction. You can't say to the buyer's agent, well, shoot, we've got this thing going on, and if you guys don't close within this certain amount of time, this will happen. You've got to remain confident, that confidentiality. But this is a circle of trust. You've got empathy, confidence, transparency, and dependability. If you can build a circle of trust with your clients, they will never question your value. They won't question it. And Heather, we talked about this earlier. All this stuff that happened with commissions being negotiable, us losing that lawsuit with Citrus Burnett. You saw all of the big news headlines say realtors are gonna make less money, commissions are gonna come down, blah, 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 there's all this conspiracy.
We've gone up.
We have raised the amount of commissions we make. You know why? It's because we're having higher level conversations upfront, setting expectations, and we're more clear on our value than we ever have been as agents. And guess what the public has responded by? I like that. I like that value and I'm willing to pay for it. Our average commission as a brokerage was about 2.7. Right? That was our average number. You know what it was by the end of last year? 2.9. It increased. Well, you know, and is that ironic or does it make all the sense in the world? The second we started talking more about our value and getting more clear on our value as agents, that came up and we were able to demonstrate that with a high level of confidence to our clients. And they're like, you know what? I am willing to pay that amount because you are providing that service and I'm grateful for it. Okay, so build and keep trust. You've got upfront ability to build and keep trust, and then over time. How do you build trust before agreement? The empathy. You demonstrate that you understand and care about your client's wants and needs. We don't have commission bread. We walk into a consult and we listen. We ask great questions. We don't dominate the conversation. Tell me, buyer, what's important to you about the next home you're looking for? Wow. Why is that so important? Who's it going to impact? What else do I need to know about your finances? Have you talked to a lender? What are you pre-approved for? Are there any timelines we need to be aware of? Who's a party to the transaction? Is a family member going to give a gift, be a co-signer? I can't tell you how many times I've come into contact with agents who are like, we got the contract and then found out an uncle was gonna sign or grandma was gonna sign, and then we had to redo title. Because there were additional parties to the transaction and we didn't know because the buyer agent didn't do the proper work on asking all the questions they needed to ask. Because guess what? The client doesn't have a whole lot of experience in real estate most of the time. They don't even know what questions they should be asking. You're the professional. You should know all the questions they should be asked.
Joe, can you expound on that a little bit? Why are they having another relative sign? Are they providing?
Just sometimes, yeah. So, for example, when my wife and I bought our first house, we were buying it singularly. When we bought our first house, my wife and I were just buying it. It was us.
Yeah.
Then, throughout the process, her grandmother was like, let me give you all a gift. Let me help with this. And so then there was, and we knew that up front. We knew we were going to get a gift. We knew part of our financing was going to be $30,000 from our grandmother. And I didn't tell anybody, I wasn't asked. But when it came up in the life loan, like, hey, what do you need to actually fund? We gave them a different number because we were including 30. And we weren't asked that question until later on. So they had done underwriting, they had done certain things for a loan higher than what we expected. Does that make sense? And so at that point, we had to undo some stuff and then start over. And so there are some times where, and it's just like why title work is so important. There might be parties to a transaction that people aren't aware of. And sometimes when you do a title search, there's more than one owner. And then you might say, seller, why didn't you tell me your brother had some sort of right to this property? Well, he was good with it and he was just fine that we were gonna sell it. We talked about the price, he and I did, and you know, we just thought it would be okay. Well, legally, he has to be a signer on this contract. Cause he has legal right to it. You can't just have a gentleman's agreement. Does that make sense? And so that's why you have to ask those questions. Scott, you've dealt with property like that, right? Where there's more than one voice selling. And when those voices aren't in agreement, does it get haywire?
It does work sometimes.
Sometimes you lose the deal altogether. Right? So building trust up front. So demonstrating empathy, proving your competency, showing up with some base level of competency early on, that builds trust. Hey, seller, here's a CMA I put together. My broker even looked over it, my team looked over it. This is the most up-to-date valuation on your home based on these data points. That's value, that's competency, that's a skill, right? Transparency, establishing that trust and communication up front. Seller, I love how much you love your home. And it has been an absolute joy to hear you talk about all the updates you've made, how you've raised your family. And that sounds like an incredible life that you built in this home. And it's my honor to help you sell it. I do want to be really straightforward and honest with you up front, just so we're not having conversations later on about a different number. I've done the legwork. This is where I really shine on research and putting together the data points. That number you originally gave me about what we want to sell your home for, it's just a little high. Here's the report I put together based on other comparable properties that have sold or are pending or are already on the market. This is a newer valuation. You have that conversation at a high level and demonstrate your skill and have that level of transparency and conversation and aren't worried about it being hard. You have to have that conversation. You're a bad agent if you have information that you would hold up front that you then deliver later on, in my opinion. You have to be upfront and honest and set expectations for clients, buyers or sellers. That's why a lot of buyers agents won't work with buyers who are pre-approved. It's hard because you can go show somebody 10 homes. They can say, I'm good, we're going to pay cash. We've got proof of funds, we're waiting on it from our lender. Who's your lender? I want somebody of mine. He'll get it to you as soon as we find the right house. And then you just lean in and you keep showing them. And they're like, all right, we're ready to pull a contract, write a contract on this property. Like, great, what do you want to do? What are you pre-approved for? Can you give me that letter? We're going to send it with the offer. Oh, we don't have that. Then they go do that, they delay the offer for 24 or 48 hours. Then all of a sudden, maybe they're not pre-approved for that number.
Or the house goes under contract.
Or they're pre-approved for more. And they're like, oh, well, we want a different, let's go look at other homes. Ask the questions. Set expectations up front and then assure them, be dependable. You offer evidence that you keep your promises and will meet the mutually agreed upon expectations at the time of it. You know what I love about our new buyer representation agreement? If you go over that with your client, it tells them exactly what their job is. It tells them what their duties and obligations are. You know what else it does for you? This is brilliant. It explains to them what your duties and obligations are. It provides the easiest roadmap for how you show up and deliver value. Well, with me, this is all the services and duties and obligations that you'll get from me, and I will deliver them. And if you say that confidently, guess what? They're going to believe you. They're going to trust that you will deliver. And then you do that over time. You do that over the course of your relationship with them. I know agents who lock in for sometimes a year with a client, showing them 50 homes. They build trust, they demonstrate their value over time. They lock in, and sometimes you don't, by the way, you never want to show 15 homes over the course of the year. But you know what you do with that particular client when you do that? You get a lifelong client. They know you, you know them. You've asked probably all the questions you could ever ask them. Then you get better at determining what properties they would even go want to see. You get to speak into their life a little more. Hey, but what if we did this to prepare for this? It's a little outside our range, but if you were able to do this financially, or set aside this, then we could go after that other property you really like, but we're about 20 grand short. You know those things and learn those things over the course of time and building trust. And so this is how trust is built and lost. And so I want to paint a picture of a staircase, right? Everybody kind of gets that analogy. When you want to get to a certain point or to a next level, you walk up some steps. When you're building trust through a transaction, you'll take steps up. You think it's possible to fall down the steps? Yeah. Very easy to fall down the steps, and the way you fall down your steps with the client is losing the trust. Not delivering on something you said you would deliver on. Not being honest up front about something you knew early on. Because you didn't want to have a hard conversation, because hard conversations are hard. But it's your fiduciary responsibility. Right? So when you're making first contact, it's a great way to build trust. You can also lose it. Everybody knows sometimes in a bad experience on a first impression, you're like, you know what? Didn't really enjoy that first impression. I don't really want to work with that person. And that could go both ways. The client can give off weird vibes. And by the way, that happens in real estate. Our industry is more, in my opinion, attacked by scammers and imposters than it ever has been. We got people texting you all pretending to be me, saying, "Are you available? I'm in a meeting, go give me some gift cards." Right? We got people pretending to be owners of land and getting with agents and getting that listing live. It's happened in this office. Where a bad actor has said, "Hey, I own this plot of land. Can you list it for me?" Agent has listed it only to find out that person doesn't actually have the land. Then all of a sudden, we are facing a lawsuit. It's a fraud, right? You can lose and build trust in these ways. When you're presenting value, reaching an agreement, setting expectations, you can build and lose trust. Educating around key milestones in the process. Here's the other thing. Here's the tremendous value. Your value of just knowing how a transaction goes from contact to close is enough value for most people because they have no idea. Most people, even if they bought a house once, they don't even remember. Or they implicitly trust their agent and their agent did a good job, or they might not even know if they did a good job. But generally speaking, the average client doesn't really know all the moving pieces. They don't understand it. And they don't even always ask questions. Right? Some people want to go look at homes all day, but the second you're like, well, go figure out what you can afford, they don't want to know because they're afraid of bad news. So they won't go get pre-approved, but they'll look at a home. But they just wind up hurting themselves even more. Because then they go see the home, visualize building the line, they don't even know if they can afford it. Or a pathway to it, right? When you're executing your marketing plan, when you're searching for properties, when you're providing ongoing communication and feedback, you can't go radio silent. You have to have consistent communication. When you're showing properties, how you negotiate your contracts. When you're in that due diligence period, okay, we're under contract, we got 10 or 14 days, we got to get inspection, we got to get pest inspection, we got to make sure all this stuff is done, and you got to do it in the time you can. And when you're closing the transaction. So the biggest thing, and again, like I said, this class is meant to be longer than an hour. And we're coming up on 15 minutes that we've got. But the reality is when you establish trust before any core service frameworks can be created and executed, you have to have trust. Before we can talk about, hey, this is what I do, and this is how I do it. And this will be your experience, I promise. You have to figure out how do you get those early nuggets of trust built in. Build into the same trust over time. Use the 8 moments where trust is built, which is this, right? You all will have this. Jim, I'll email it to you. I've already emailed it to Chris and Heather. It's a document that has the participant value. Use the 8 moments where trust is built or lost. And then for each moment, you probably can define what this looks like in your own business. It can be customizable for you. The way you do it doesn't have to be the way Jim does it, right? And so you can build it and boost trust by setting up certain systems that work or don't work for you. And then set your plan in action. Have a plan, have a system, have a proper protocol for what you do from contact, not contract, from contact to close. And then set it in action. All right, what have we learned so far that's had the biggest impact so far in the conversation? What's the takeaway?
I like to comment about surprise and delight,
Yeah.
put that down.
Yeah, so let's jump there. I think we all know what fiduciary is. Be a professional. Keep things confidential. Execute your competence. And you can do that with confidence and deliver that value. Work with functionary versus fiduciary. Functionaries, I'll just be very transparent. We have a lot of functionary agents in the market. We have far more functionary agents than we do fiduciary agents. People who enter the business thinking they just make a quick buck. They had a family member that was wanting to sell, got their license, got a deal done, and aren't really doing much. They have shallow relationships, they assume the least amount of responsibility, they report data and information, they are reactive to requests, they focus on tasks, they tell and sell. They're replaceable and they're minimally paid.
How do you know if you're a functionary versus fiduciary?
So a fiduciary creates deep relationships. You can tell pretty early on by the kind of relationship you're building with a client, whether you're gonna be a functionary or fiduciary. By how deep that relationship is, or even if it's not deep, how deep the trust level is. Do they trust you implicitly to lead them to the outcome they desire? Accept the most responsible way. There's high level of ownership in getting this client to the outcome. Here's the other thing, the difference between functionary and fiduciary, do you know the desired outcome they want? Because sometimes it's not even what they told you. Sometimes through asking better questions and being in a relationship longer, you then uncover the real outcome they desire. Right? Fiduciaries accept the most responsibility, high level of ownership. They interpret and they advise, and they can do that confidently.
I think he's busier since he left us.
On data and information. Also, rather than being reactive to things, you anticipate needs. When you're working with somebody who anticipates needs, they're having conversations before they're necessary. And what I mean by that, it's like, hey, we have the inspection coming up. Here's generally how it works. Here's the form. I want to go over it with you. Here's what the buyer might request to be fixed.
Okay, so just curiosity here, me being your agent. How do I anticipate things when I don't even know what to anticipate?
By coming to trainings, by locking in with Stephen in the business coaching program, by exposing yourself to other people, by shadowing other agents, by knowing your contracts, by knowing very clearly from contact to close. Because in theory, we can learn the practical theory all day of here's what it looks like to contact the client. Here's what it looks like to convert a client to a lead. Here's what it looks like to make them a client from lead to we have an agreement. Here's what the agreement spells out. Here's all the things I have to do. These are my duties and obligations. Here are all theirs that I have to communicate. Because by the way, most clients don't know what their duties and obligations are. You have to educate them on that. So from contact to close, you need to know all that. And if you don't, my encouragement to you today is to learn what is the whole process from contact to close? And what can I tweak and what needs to maintain the same? What can I surprise and delight throughout that contact to close? Maybe the first time I show them a home, I come up with a little care bag that's got, I don't know, a granola bar, a cookie, a bottle of water. I've got a file that's got the PVA report. I've got the seller's disclosure at hand. They've got something physical and tangible, and you've treated them to a snack as they're touring home. I know agents do that. Right? Pop buys. Right? So, and then the fiduciary also, they focus on outcomes. They educate and they guide. They don't tell and sell. They're irreplaceable. You ever worked with somebody you were like, God, I don't know what I would have done without that person. Could not have gone through that thing without that person. That's what you need to be for your clients. And you're highly paid. We talked about it earlier. And it might actually be more now after, our commissions have raised. But when we were running the numbers last year, the average agent in this office, based on the deals they were closing, the hours they were putting in, they make about $500 an hour. So if we were to extrapolate what the average agent producing in this office makes, they are on average worth $500 an hour. You're highly paid. The only other professions that make $500 an hour are your lawyers and the doctors. Sometimes not even the doctors. Okay. We'll go over this real quick. So sellers, this is an important thing. This would be a note I would take down or something I would highlight. Sellers, to net them, this is what they desire. This is what every seller wants. They want to net the most amount of money with the fewest amount of hassles in the least amount of time. That's what every seller wants. That's the perfect storm. That's the perfect scenario. If you know that's what they want, can you build a system to deliver it? Can you put in safeguards and expectation setting conversations when this doesn't happen? Yes. But ultimately knowing that this is what every seller wants, to net the most amount of money with the fewest amount of hassles in the least amount of time, that is accurate. Now, they might have different wants and needs and timelines. But the reality is this is most consistently true for most sellers. Sometimes the least amount of time doesn't always work because they are relocated. Sometimes there's a doctor that's moving to Florida and they've got a residency opportunity and they can't sell the house until a certain time, but you can start preparing for that reality. That makes sense. And generally speaking, at least one of those categories will be priority over the other. For some people, it's like, I actually don't care how long it takes. I want to make the most amount of money. For some people, they want to make money on the house. They would like to do it quickly, but if you provide an experience with zero hassle, they're going to pick that every time. Those are the core principles every seller wants. And if you can combine all three, you're in a good spot. Seller core services, this is what you do. You consult to a decision. What's the outcome? What decision do they make? How do you market the property? How are you going to negotiate the contract? And then closing the sale. All right, this is all information that'll be in that stuff. Again, we're coming up on the time constraint. All right, let's talk about seller surprise and delight. Jim, you mentioned you like this. So seller surprise and delight, these are the extra things you can do. The agents that deliver the best experiences build surprise and delight into those experiences. If you get the job done without being remarkable, there's nothing to remark about. Now, some clients will be like, oh my gosh, you led me to my desired outcome. And despite their experience, they might give you a raving review. But surprise and delight delivers 3 R's. It gets you great reviews and ratings, and it gets you referrals. Anybody had a good barber or somebody who cut their hair?
I don't use a barber, but yes.
Yeah, and then you wound up referring them to one of your friends?
Yes.
Somebody I referred to people is my landscaper. Right? Had yard work done. I'll be very transparent. I don't want to work in my yard. I'm not a yard worker. It's not my thing. I'll mow, because I can drown out the noise, and I can be in my own bubble. But generally speaking, I don't wanna dig out weeds, I don't wanna put mulch down, I don't wanna plant flowers, I would kill it. So I would pay somebody to do landscape. Happy to do that. That's just a Joseph personal preference. And I found a good one. That is high value, he's not the cheapest. He's not the most expensive. But in my opinion, the value of what I'm looking for, he does a great job, he's reliable, he shows up on time, he gets the job done. And in a cost effective way. And I've given his name out to no less than 30 people. Right? So at the end of the day, that's your job as an agent. Oh my gosh. You need to know about Heather. Heather did the most phenomenal job of getting our house sold. Heather showed us 20 homes, made us feel so good, answered every question we had, put us in touch with her lender partner. Got us pre-approved for more than what we thought. Negotiated on the deal, certain things that the seller was gonna repair that happened before closing, we got to paint it before we moved in. Got me a special deal with the mover. Gosh, you need to use Heather. Right? Some of your surprise and delight are your vendor partners. We're gonna deliver awesome service in addition to the service you're giving. I have a lender who I send everybody to. He's done my own loan. Now, he doesn't do everything, so he doesn't do new construction, he doesn't do USDA loan, so I can't send him everybody. But there's a ton of people I can send them to, and you know why I send them to Brad? Because Brad sits down with them. And he talks about the rates, he talks about the monthly payment, he talks about the lifestyle they want. And he paints a beautiful financial picture that marries all three of those and lets them know if they're ready. Or what they need to do to get ready. And then his team closes things fast. Get the job done. Now, I've got other lenders who I love and trust, and I send business to you. But a great lender partner is valuable to you and something that you can use to surprise and delight. Your vendor partner list as an agent is a value. Who you know that can help with home ownership or life in general, that you can put your clients in touch with, is an extreme value to them. So, seller video services, you can bundle these things together, or you can unbundle, have things all apart. So, you know, for certain people, it's like, hey, if you. I charge 4% for my listing services, and you get landscaping work done, you get virtual staging done, you get drone photos, you get XYZ. And they can pay you 4% commission by providing that bundle of services. Whatever you can say, you can choose out of that menu, and we can talk about what that costs. Right? And so unbundling prices, I charge X if you bring the buyer, I charge X if I bring the buyer, I charge X if someone else brings the buyer, I charge X if you buy an additional property through me. That's a mofer right there, might make an offer for immediate response. I charge this, which might be a discounted rate, if you buy a future property with me. If you walk in with me to commit to working with me as your agent on any future deals, this is what you'll get from me. I know people do that. You know where that shows up more often than not?
My guess would be farm.
Investors.
Yeah.
Investor clients. Investor clients might get a special deal because they're going to give you more frequent business. Right? Okay. This is all good. This will be on the handout.
This is a long handout.
I know it's 143 pages. But you have it. That's the most important.
I'm gonna read
You
it.
have it, you have access to it. But it behooves you to read it. Okay, and this is the core element of what buyers want. They want to find the right property that meets their timing needs and get it at the best price with the fewest amount of hassles. Right property meets their timing needs and get it at the best price with the fewest amount of hassles. This doesn't always transpire. Most of the time it doesn't. So your ability to really educate them on the front end will help you a great deal. Finding the right property that meets their time needs and then get it right price with the fewest amount of hassle. That's what every buyer wants. Okay. Buyer agency agreement. Buyer agency is a relatively new idea. It was established in the early 90s. The Real Estate Buyers Agency Council was founded in '88 to advocate for buyers' representation. And in concert with the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, agency disclosures and buyer's agency came into being and are now widely used. So what is that buyer agent agreement, that buyer agreement? A written contract between the buyer and agent outlining the details of their working relationship. When should it be signed? Yeah, front, it must be signed before the agent can show a property, consult your broker for best practices. I don't care if it's on the hood of your car. I don't care if it's on the little table on the front porch.
I think too, though, when you go into showing time now, it says do have a signed buyer representation. Before you can show the house.
Yeah, but that depends on the age, I think, the list.
Okay.
Okay, so a couple of things. Essential conversations when explaining your buyer agency agreement. This is where your value and knowing your value shows up. And when you're able to do it confidently, this is an easy conversation. Explain what you charge and what you do to earn it. Make sure you're disclosing in conspicuous language that stands out and is clearly visible and understandable. That the buyer acknowledges that there are no standard compensation rates or programs. And that the terms in the buyer agency agreement are fully negotiable and are not established or set by law. That is true, it has always been true. Number two, make sure you cover whether this is an exclusive or non-exclusive agency relationship. 99 times out of 100, it's going to be an exclusive relationship. I don't even know why it would be non-exclusive. Okay, explain how you get paid for your services. The buyer can pay you directly at closing. The seller or seller's broker can pay you at closing. You then have the opportunity to explain the opportunities and challenges of cooperative compensation. Explain opportunities of what seller concessions are. And if the seller or listing broker is paying via cooperative compensation, never say or imply that your services are free. That's what got us in hot water. Buyers even just walking around saying, hey, work with me, I'm free, the seller pays me. It's just not true. The only exception to saying that your services are free is if you are actually not receiving compensation for the transaction, and in fact, you are doing it for free. I don't think any of us are doing that, right? All right, essential conversations when explaining your buyer agency agreement. When explaining the possibility of sellers offering compensation, you will have to deal with three possibilities. Equal. So let's say, this is hypothetically, that 8% commission is being offered on a home. And it's equal, which means the listing agent will make 4% and the buyer's agent will make 4%. Same scenario, it's less. The listing agent is going to make 5% and you're going to make, as a buyer's agent, 3%. Or more, right? If it's more, the excess cannot be paid to the buyer's agent. You can only ever make what you and your buyer have agreed on the buyer agreement. So if there's more, so if you sit down and you sign a buyer agent agreement for 2.5% and the listing is offering 6 or 3, you will only get 2.5%. It can never exceed it. So buyer core services, this is what you do. Consult to a decision, search for properties, find the house, negotiate the contract, close the sale. Okay. Buyer surprise and delight, also reviews, ratings, and referrals. That's all I got for you. Jim, I'll be sure to email you that handout. But it's time for a new class, 12:03. So Tara should be here any minute. Hey, is Tara coming for this class? So if you guys need a drink, coffee, you're in the bathroom, now would be the time to do it.
I got you.
Just, you guys can meet,
Yeah, I'm done with my class. Tara's got a new.
she's coming.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Obviously. Get hold tight. Yeah, so,
Don't have it. Jim, good to see you, brother.
Thank you.
Great, it's good to see you, Heather, great to see you. I'm 12:50. So. Yeah, that's very. I think you have 3 reports, so we.
Let's do it. Excited. I know, it's gonna be good. Well, what's going on?
Are you,
How are you? Were you in the last class?
with you?
Yeah, yeah, how did it go?
Yeah.
Very well.
Good?
Can't have, but you work on it, you'll be. No, you're good. Well, and that's fixed. This, you can accept this back.
Good job.
This agent's hey, we're not really doing this period.
I'm gonna try to get this on this big screen.
You're already fine. And it's accepted as a fact of offer. Okay, but if this had a kick out, you could surely only vote that we're out of. Well, if you've got questions on there, if there's any contingency, if they not, it's getting from a highly recommendation. Ask them before you go on. Does that make sense? There's no next contingency, it's not, it's no way out to the body, it was simply a kick out. Because you can still show it, maybe just. Yeah. As the beginning, so we have to. You find a way to get rid of something. And again, if you accept this, I mean, you have to take out money.
Yeah.
Despite that, because if not, that's still on your law. So. You're gonna be. But I was, that's not necessary on this until you set.
We've got some more folks coming. I don't see that.
Great. Well, that's. Well, I don't even think you can do that yet because you're a city guys. This is for like, this is a backup offer, that's not relevant till it's also the seat.
Yeah. I think everybody's taking it for 5 minutes. There you go.
Hey,
Everybody's
does
taking.
he just?
Yeah. Everybody about 5 minutes. Stretch their legs. What's happening?
Where about me, not good. Well, either they're not just 37.
I did this. Yeah. 1937.
I'm.
Incoming.
Yes.
I was just telling you.
I know, right? Yeah.
If I was thinking about. Thinking about chatting and. Maybe, and you go into the next team and message, like, I wanna come chat with somebody on a hire consultation.
Hello.
Yeah, here we go, all I want.
Okay.
Okay, I wanna chat with somebody on the house. Can I chat
Let's go, wait. Well. You don't think so, you know, you read that. Was it good? Nice square. All squared away. You gotta run. Stick right next to me. How are you? What kind of combo are you getting? No, we already did, but. So I've got Phyllis, listen, you get a bit of sleeping. Brand new graduate. Congratulations. These things good.
So me teaching this class was probably gonna give you more overwhelm. Well. Yes and no, I'm very good at overwhelming myself. Good. So I don't want to be the one that does. Trisha yesterday with her class, I told her I need to sit down with her because I think she and I operate at the same thing. I want to have everything organized and ready to go, and then I start. And I'm finding very quickly, Tara, you just gotta get into the mess. And then I'm also feeling very defeated with this. Withdrawal. That Samantha took away. Oh, she like separating. It's okay. And how long has that been going on? I think my frustration is that it was, the contract was in my name, not the team's, not hers, nothing. Oh, gotcha. And I was doing fine with my client and my client was fine with me. And I was just frustrated that because of the foundation issues, it wasn't selling. Yeah. And I had asked Samantha if we could drop the price, and she's like, no, we don't need to drop the price, we just need to change the pictures, and that's when she took it. She changed the pictures, and it's still not selling, so she just dropped the price to what I was. And I'm like, if I had done that, I could have done it. Yeah. But I'm kind of stepped in there. Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do with my business. So I am gonna send a thing out and see if I can find somebody that I can shout out, because I have never done a presentation. Just pick me. Just pick me. Yeah, just put it in the chat. I do have a potential buyer though. I just sent her the link to get pre-approved, so. We'll see what happens. Yeah, that's good, yeah. And I want you to look at this and tell me what you think, because I'm really interested in seeing. I think Lexi's gonna go over it with me next week, but. What is it? My KPA. Oh, yeah, you should do that, Steven. Okay. Like if you're in coaching, I mean, if he's doing that, I just feel like he's got like 50 gazillion, and I know Lexi does too. Yeah, she'll do it, yeah. The last KPA I did was when I was admin for Philip. Which I know you guys can't approve, but I told them. And so did you take that with Samantha, or you did that through the market center? I did the KPA back in January of last year when I got my admin job for Philip. He wanted me to do the KPA, which is why they told me, hey, you should get your license. Yeah. And then I told Lexi yesterday, I was like, I want to take it again as an agent. Yeah. And see what the difference is. Yeah. But actually, it's once you take it one time, you can pull the results for it. Oh, can you? You don't have to retake it. Okay, well, I retook it. Okay, well, there you go. We'll see what happens. Is anybody else coming? Yes.
I'm here. I'm
Jim's
here.
coming. I know, you're everybody, you're all that matters.
I would say that.
I am gonna be really honest, I need to go to Chat GPT, I did a Chat GPT. Research on. The MRE, this training. But I thought we could just go down through it and talk through, you guys may or may not have been on the team meeting where we talked through this. But we did it relatively briefly, and I wanted to give some space for us to talk through, like. What this could look like, and I know this looks crazy, this is a free online version of the MREA that I use a lot. So if you guys are not, has everybody read the MREA? I'm working my way through it very slowly. Have you read this book, Jim? They, you can get these on Amazon, you can get them on Audible, we also sell them at discount we get them in bulk, and I think for $50 from the NCA office. But this is the model for how to grow and build a real estate business, and basically how it was written. Gary Keller in the mid-90s researched and interviewed the top 100 agents in the industry across all brokerages. So when you get into the back of your book, you'll see all the case studies. These are all millionaire real estate agents, like where they work. So some of them are Coldwell Banker, some of them are independent, some are Keller Williams, some are RE/MAX. These are their stories and how they built their business. So what they did is they took the snapshot of the 100 and they wrote a best practice model. And that's everything we teach. So all the Keller Williams training is built around industry best practice from the studies they did on the top agents in the industry. So we know that it's true, and it has worked for these people.
And I'm sure it's worked for a lot more agents. It's the early time.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing, they wrote a second edition of this, and I've seen it, I was on a call once with Jay Papasan. I was on a KWU training course for instructors, and they put us in rooms to role play. Guess who was in my room? Jay Papasan. So it's me and Jay.
He's on the screen right there now.
Yeah, he's out on the screen. He wrote the One Thing book. And he co-wrote this book. And so I basically, I said, at the end of our role play, I said, Jay, when's the next version coming out? And he said, hold on, got off the screen, came back with a stack of papers. He said, I've had it for 2 years, right here. He showed me the manual. We can't put it to print because what we keep realizing is version 1 is still effective. So there's not really any changes we need to make it relevant in the market today. So even though this book is like 30 years old, it's still the one.
Like a five,
Still the one.
strong like a five.
That's right. So today we're gonna talk about, and I kind of like teed this up at the office meeting in this way. This is a true story, and actually it happened in this market center.
And you also brought it up at my horse licensing class.
I told Haley I would stop the recording and restart it, and I forgot. Haley, I'm doing it. Actually, I don't know how to stop. We're on live, we're live on YouTube.